Fuck off. All right. How are we doing? Welcome to today's live, everybody. I think it's the spring equinox today. It's March 21st. Is that the 20th? It's weird. I always think the equinox used to be on the 21st, but then I started seeing shit where it was like on the 20th. But I think today's Friday, March 21st. I think it's spring equinox. So here we are. We got a new season. Do you guys feel the new season coming? The new season is here. So happy spring equinox, everyone who's watching this. Welcome to today's live, guys. We're just going to kind of hang out. We're going to kind of talk about some shit. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things here. And give me a sec here. Okay, so what I want to talk about today was a little bit of just, what sort of, it's funny, I get on this and then I'm like, I forget, like, what the fuck was I planning on talking about? I was meditating right before this, but doing like a visualization style meditation. And then I did that. And then I was like, get on here immediately. And I'm like, what the fuck was I going to talk about? So yeah, throat chakra. Thank you. So I was going to talk today a lot about the sacral chakra and the throat chakra and just energetically sort of what's happening. I mean, you've obviously seen a lot of things online right now. Astrologically, we had the blood moon, we had the lunar eclipse, we have the spring equinox. There's probably a bunch of retrograde shit happening, a bunch of different grades happening. I mean, I know there is. I don't know exactly what those retrogrades are, but I know those are happening. So there's a lot of stuff happening, energetically, astrologically. The energy is sort of just swirling and sort of crazy right now. And so I'm going to talk a lot about the sacral field sort of expanding, what that process is like, how that influences the throat chakra, what I sort of feel is happening sort of in the space. So we're going to kind of channel into this and talk about this. I guess I'll sort of preface this whole piece, what I'm feeling right now, and you guys watching may or may not resonate, that really March is, again, I know we've been saying this sort of shit for a long time, but March is very transitionary. March is very much like a bridge. I think altogether the year 2025 is very much like a bridge year. What I mean by that is like there's so many shifts that are happening in this year 2025. Again, it's like a year 9 year in terms of numerology. But even just as you feel into the energetically, what it feels like is there's so much completion and starting new. So I don't know if you're feeling that 2025 feels like it's very much like split between starting new and completing, right? Starting new and completing. Whereas I feel next year is just going to be like this brand new space where it's going to be like a whole new world, part of my Aladdin reference. But 2026 is going to be really this whole new space. And so we're kind of trying to like transition into this sort of new world this year. And so it's very much, we're saying goodbye to a lot of pieces. We're saying goodbye to certain types of relationships. We're saying goodbye to karmic patterns. We're saying goodbye to different ways of being and trying to move into a new process, trying to move into a new paradigm, trying to move into a new way of being. And so I just feel this year, generally, the year 2025 is really this sort of split where it's a death and it's a birth happening simultaneously. Whereas I feel last year, the second half of last year, and I've talked about this a bunch, was really just death. It was just death and discomfort. But what I feel is trying to happen is more and more of what's coming is trying to drop into your field or trying to drop into your consciousness. So I don't know if this is something that's even just resonating for those of you who are listening to this, but what's coming is trying to drop into the field and trying to drop into consciousness. And I feel March, with all the activity that's happening, is a really big sort of inflection point in this year as a whole. that so many things, like March feels sort of like its own sort of microcosm initiation where everything is sort of getting heightened. Everything is getting heightened, but then something is trying to, it's kind of like when the pressure gets strong enough that the valve lets go and something begins to open. So I really feel that something is trying to, and again, this is not reading fucking astrology. This is just tuning into what I feel internally in my space from working with people, also just feeling into sort of the collective energy and just noticing trends and what's out there, that April, something really big is going to be revealed. Something really, really big is going to be revealed. And right now you're getting sort of snapshots of what's coming. You're sort of getting snapshots of what's coming. And I am going to get to the sacral and throat and what this is about, because I feel this is a really big theme right now, and also just a big proponent in general of what this is about. And so here's one sort of piece to bring in. You know, when we're really struggling, we're moving through really challenging times, when we're moving through a contraction, and we move through a lot of doubt, we move through a lot of fear, we move through a lot of insecurity, and we sort of like lose hold of hope. You know, it's almost like the experience, you guys, that we are, and I don't know if you resonate experiences, but like it's like you're trying to experience the deepest thread of being trapped. You're trying to experience the deepest thread of being trapped. So, for example, say you're 2 years old and you have an anxious attachment and you had to cry it out when you were like a baby. You had to cry it out when you were a baby. Eventually, what happens at some point is there's this grief and pain and fear and anguish that lies below sort of protective dysregulation in the system. It just sort of holds there, right? It just sort of holds there. And what that grief and what that fear is that we're trapped to some degree. So what I'm actually feeling is at some level in our system, at some different variation in our path, we're experiencing a feeling of really being trapped. That's like the really difficult aspect of this, of feeling what it's like to really feel trapped and like you don't have options, right? So maybe the second half of last year or at different points through the first few months of this year, you've experienced this feelings of helplessness, of anguish, of terror, and fear, that there's not really, that you don't feel like you can move forward, right? And in that sort of space, what's going to happen is there's a lot of regret. There's a temporary regret. There's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of fear. Robin says, I've been having escape fantasies pop up completely. So a lot of what's happening in our system and what's being driven up is like the deepest patterns to wanting to escape, to flee, to run away, essentially the deepest feelings in your system of being trapped. And I believe this is going to happen with our own stuff, but also just through the lineage. So you're probably feeling like a compound effect of maybe early infancy stuff that you experienced when you felt trapped, but also collectively how your ancestors felt trapped, right? And what happens when we feel trapped, right, is we're going to feel helpless, that we can't create what we want in the world and life. We can't create the type of relationships that we want. And so I feel so much of what's been coming up right now is this really sort of hyper focused, sort of really magnified and condensed feeling of being trapped. And what I mean by that, it's, and so much of like the ways that the ego protects, the ways that we hide by certain identities, the ways that we use certain patterns to sort of comfort and console us. And so much in this bridge in March, what I feel like is the deepest feelings of helplessness and terror, and a feeling of being trapped or a feeling of being suffocated. And I bet this has probably been happening in some sort of cycle and form for the past 6 to 8 months. This is stuff that's been happening for me personally too, as well as just so many clients, and just as well as what I'm sort of witnessing and just sort of like observing just what's happening in the energy, right? And so what happens when these feelings of being trapped come up? And here, I'll say this actually next, you guys. What you're experiencing right now is not real life, what you're experiencing now is not real life. So maybe you've really struggled sort of this month of March. And I want you to know that what you're experiencing right now is not real life. It is a magnified, compounded, sort of condensed microcosm event right now that is not real life. Because you might be in sort of a space where you're kind of confused, or this sort of twilight zone, or you're like, what the fuck is going on? Your perception of yourself, your perception of reality and everything around you feels so different than maybe it felt a year ago. You're like, how am I perceiving things? How am I perceiving things? So I want you to know that this is not real life. What's happening right now is this very sort of condensed, magnified experience that is not your normal. Because I think what happens is right now in these experiences, we're like, is this my new normal? And that sort of creates this deeper sort of fear and terror. Is like, is this my new normal? Maybe I felt a certain way at a different time. Have I lost? Will I never feel okay again? Will I never go back to how I was? And so what happens in these experiences, it's so confronting and we have so much terror, but I want you to know that it's not real life, because everything is here. Everything is here. And what really feels, the word trapped actually feels pretty bang on and in alignment. The feeling of being trapped. So basically what I mean is where your nervous system and your soul, the capacity to create your soul in the world, it feels trapped. It feels stuck. Like you can't fucking move. You can't create what you want. And so you're going through a microcosm initiation experience of this experience of feeling trapped. Because what happens when we have an experience where we feel trapped is it creates a break. It creates a fragmentation with ourselves, right? For example, we're 2 years old, we're crying, a parent is inconsistent in the co-regulation. That terror and that trappedness gets suffocated inside of us. It gets buried. And it's almost like that's lifting to the surface right now. It's lifting to the surface right now. What it's trying to show you is all the ways that you have not been able to live in the total alignment of your soul because of your very human trauma material from your life and the life of your ancestors. It's all coming up right now. And so we're kind of like, we might be struggling or going through this period of like, what is happening? Your deepest survival physiology has been reared to the surface, and it's really confusing, right? It's really confusing. That's why I say this is not real life. I don't want to say shadow, but all the darkness that is held inside of you, all the pieces that have held as a barrier in your system from you being able to move and live the life that you want is right there. It's right there permeating the body. It's right there permeating your consciousness. And so it's really destabilizing, right? So if it feels like, or has felt like at various times, maybe it doesn't feel like that today, or it doesn't feel like that this week, that your ego is getting sort of punched and beaten down, it's because that is what's happening. Your ego is getting punched and beaten down because it's trying to create a breakthrough. There is a miracle in motion. I know this with absolute fact. There is a miracle in motion right now. I know this with absolute fact. What happens during these periods, you guys, when all our trapped survival physiology comes up, we lose hope. I don't want to say we lose hope, but we sort of, there's a dimmer on possibility. There's a dimmer on the image of the higher self of what we know that we can create, right? We lose that hope and possibility of abundance, right? So maybe in that time, maybe your business suffers, maybe you suffer financially, because as your survival physiology is brought up, you're going to sort of be in a space of scarcity. You're going to be in a space of insecurity. You're going to be in a space of doubt. You're going to be in a space of fear, in a space of helplessness, a space of regret. So you might be ruminating about the past. You might be like, fuck. You might be like, did I waste all this time? Or because all what's coming up is, it's not real life, you guys. What's coming up, it's not real life. We're in a microcosm, condensed, magnified experience of your physiology coming up. And it might be from your life, or it might not be from your life. It might be from your ancestors. I would probably say what's more accurate, it's a combination of the two. Yeah, Robin says, feel that the ego smackdown. There is an ego smackdown happening right now. And so what's happening is there is a miracle that I believe is going to come into consciousness, slowly start to come more into consciousness come April. But March is this very sort of transitionary sort of bridge where it's all brought to the surface. It's all brought to the surface. And when we have an experience either from our life or from the lineage or from our bloodline of where we're trapped in our system, what happens is we have these breaks and connections, and we find different ways to hide behind the ego, right? Different sort of identities, ways that we find value in family systems where we're not seen. We have different methods in relationships where we karmically try to get our needs met without having to be vulnerable and truly express who we are or what our desires are or what we want. But through this physiology and through sort of the lineage trauma and the terror and the fear, we create these breaks and connections, and we find different ways that we hide behind the ego or sort of the identity or the comfort of the ego, which serves as a barrier to what we want. And so all of this is coming up because you're trying to create a breakthrough. You're trying to create a breakthrough. So Robin asks, I've been questioning if I'm totally insane, huh? Feeling so alone in this location. Like, what am I doing and what is this? Am I making all this shit up? I totally get that, because what's happening, you guys, and if you're feeling alone, what's happening is you're breaking into a new form of consciousness. You're breaking into, I think what's more accurate, you're breaking into a new level of a consciousness that is forming and evolving within you. You're breaking into a new level of that consciousness. And a big reason why the loneliness happens, you guys, is because we're breaking away from old familiar patterns and construction of the ego. And that's why a lot of people are freaking out right now. That's why there's a lot of confusion, because the ego is getting rattled, right? The ego is getting rattled. Essentially, what it's revealing is the ways that your ego tried to soothe, comfort, create an illusion of safety, but ultimately not allow you to live your soul's deepest possible truth. So the ego's getting like this right now, right? Which is why you're going to go through experiences of total anguish and helplessness, isolation, being alone. Am I fucking crazy? Because what's happening is the ego conforms reality, right? The ego is a construct that creates reality. It's absolutely essential. It's how we know who we are in the greater sort of collective and establishment, right? And so when the ego gets shook, it means that how we sort of perceived and knew ourselves is getting rocked and it's getting destabilized. So that's why your self-concept of yourself and how you view yourself in relationship to reality is really fucked up right now. It's really like, what's going on? I've kind of had experiences like, is this even real life? Am I in a simulation? It's almost like this experience where it's like, am I having deja vu? Am I in a dream of like, is this actually my life? Like this real sort of like this liminal sort of like almost dreamscape in your sort of waking reality. And that means consciousness is shifting. That means consciousness is shifting. Right. And so if you've really felt that, it's the ego construct is getting shaken the fuck up. And it's probably happening beyond just your lifetime. It's probably happening from an ancestral, because there's an ancestral sort of ego construct that we hold on to. Right. And so what is trying to show you, and this is going to happen at different layers and levels for people where they're at in their process, and also just what their sort of incarnation is for their soul and what their incarnation is for their soul at this particular sort of juncture in their evolution. And so your ego's getting shaken because a miracle is trying to break through underneath that or beyond that. So what's happening is there actually is an orchestration that is working beyond the ego right now. So beyond that, what we can actually conceptualize or identify with, there is something happening that is beyond that. But again, we don't really trust that. We're like, we doubt it. Like that can't actually be true, right? But there is, and that's when I say a miracle is happening, meaning the divine energetically is working in sort of an algorithm that is beyond the conception of your ego right now. And I believe that's going to begin to come more into, let's say, like an identifiable form of consciousness in April. That's what I really, really feel. And so that's why a lot of the energy is being shaken up, right? There's a new upgrade in sort of your consciousness, and you feel really alone in that because not everyone is moving into this form of consciousness. Not everyone is moving into this form of consciousness. What happens in these sort of junctures, you guys, there's splits that happen. You kind of upgrade and ascend to a new timeline where so many people around you, whether family or friends, or even your partner, just stays exactly where they are. They're not even sort of attuned energetically, spiritually, vibrationally to what's happening. And so what it does create, it creates confusion to think there's something wrong with you as we're shifting, but it really sort of shakes up your life. It really sort of shakes up your life. And now here's where I'm going to get into sort of the sacral and the throat. And so much of feeling trapped in your nervous system, so much of feeling trapped in your system, what it does is a big thing we do is we siphon our own sacral energy. We siphon our own sacral energy. What I really mean is we cut off, we dim, we compound, we hide, we compress our life force energy. When I say life force energy, what I really mean is the capacity to feel alive, right? Like if you've ever done somatic therapy, this is always what somatic therapists, you want to feel really regulated and grounded, but really vibrant and really, really alive in your system. That's when your system's in a really, really healthy place. And so much of your sacral energy is going to be exactly the reason why you haven't felt alive just in your body, right? This is why people go to drugs, people go to alcohol, these, because we're trying to feel alive. This is why people have these sort of really dysfunctional relationships. We're trying to feel alive. We're trying to feel something internally. Really, what we're trying to feel is a full capacity of our sacral energy. And this has nothing to do with sex. This is just your creative cosmic potential, your potential as a human being to feel alive. So Robin says, I'm leaning into being vulnerable, sharing more, letting people feel me. That triggers the aloneness and the feeling of, am I crazy? Because 90% of people don't get it or don't want to receive it. A lot of people are spiraling down. Yeah. And this really, really is going to be about actually being okay in that experience because you feel alone, but I want you to know the feeling of aloneness is only temporary. That feeling of aloneness is only temporary, right? It's the exact reason. It's the exact reason why someone's in a relationship and they break up and they sort of begin to scratch up to the feeling of being alone. And then immediately they go on a dating app or they get another relationship. When if they just sort of held the course and just sort of surrendered into it, they would actually begin to find what they have been looking for relationally, right? It doesn't mean we don't want a relationship or we don't need a relationship. But if you actually drop into it, you begin to move beyond sort of the pain and suffering to actually this process of feeling more found and more seen by you than ever before. And so that's what's happening right now is all this pain and all this anguish. The practice is a lot of it is, can you actually drop into it? Can you move beyond the pain of it and understand they're really, truly, and this is factual, there is a miracle that is in motion. There is a miracle that is in motion. And a lot of what's happening is you're being shown through your survival physiology or being trapped in your system of where you've siphoned off your own power. Where have you compressed your vitality to make your family comfortable, to make your partner comfortable, to be able to fit in with an old friend group, to be able to match the vibration of a city that you live in that you've known for years doesn't have resonance with you? What are ways that you have held on to guilt and shame over your power? When we experience guilt, guilt means we are holding on to the emotions and the pain and the grief of other people. When we feel guilt, and I think this is a big theme with me personally, is actually guilt over my power, right? I know a lot of people resonate with this. And so what that means when we're holding guilt, it means that we're holding on to other people's pain and grief, and it doesn't serve us, and we're being asked to let go of it. And as we let go of it, we begin to access the totality of our sacral field. One big reason when we're holding a lot of guilt and shame, I don't want to outshine other people. I want people to feel uncomfortable. I don't want people to think that I'm too much. So we hold a lot of guilt and shame. What this does is it creates a compression in the sacral field. And then what happens when you have a compression in the sacral field? You're more prone to things like addiction. You're more prone to codependent relationships. You're more prone to codependent sort of family dynamics when you show up in your little boy or little girl. A compressed sacral field is now what happens is we move through the world karmically. We move through the world codependently. We move through the world essentially looking to have a need and a desire met that we have not been able to fulfill internally, right? So think about when you're pulling from a compressed sacral energy, meaning your womb, you have a lot of trauma in your womb, or a lot of stuck energy in your womb, or a lot of ancestral energy in your womb. Same thing for a guy with a cock, right? When you have a lot of that stuck and that energy is not able to, when we think of like a really open sacral field, like a guy is in his cock energy or a woman is in her womb energy, and it's not even sexual, it's just about vitality. It's just about vitality and being alive. That's just what it's about. And when you pull from a compression of that, and a really, really big theme with the compression of sacral field is that we actually internally, we siphon our power. Means we shut down our power in certain ways, right? And I mentioned this before, but the ways we siphon our power is that we fear that we're fundamentally flawed. There's something wrong with us. We're going to be abandoned, or we're going to outshine. I think a really big one to put in the mix here too is that we're going to be invaded or we're going to be attacked. For example, if you have like a really strong oracle lineage where a lot of women in your line were oracles, but they weren't able to step into that power, then you're going to have a lot of fear that people will try to take from you, that you'll be invaded, that you'll be hung, or you'll be guillotined, or you'll be lynched if you actually step into your power. And so what we do is we dilute and we dim our sacral field as a way to kind of manage and hold that terror, that fear, that feeling of being trapped, right? And so when we're trapped, when we feel like we're trapped, it means the sacral field is compressed. It means that your sacral energy is not able to flow seamlessly. And a really, really big theme that spirit is showing us right now is, where is your sacral field compressed? Where are you holding on to fear? There's, something wrong with me. Who am I? Whatever, imposter syndrome. I'm going to be abandoned. Everyone's going to leave me if I step into my power. I'm going to outshine other people. I'm going to be attacked or invaded, right? So we compress our sacral field. Means that we don't allow the true vitality to come through us. Addiction's a big part of this, right? Where we're trying to, it becomes a way that we sabotage and we abandon and we diminish our own sort of vibration. It's sort of a self-sabotage mechanism, but a way to try to console and comfort the feeling of being trapped, the feeling of being alone, this feeling of being in isolation, right? But when the energy drops, the sacral field is totally opens up. And so a big theme that's trying to happen right now is your sacral field is trying to expand in conjunction with your throat. The sacral and the throat always work together. They always work together. So if you listen to someone speak and their throat feels really shut down, it means they're going to be disconnected to their cock or their womb. It's like if you listen to a guy speak and his voice is a little bit high, he's probably not connected to his cock at all. Like if you listen to a guy's voice, you can tell if he's connected to his, you could put a video of 5 guys and I could tell you just by him speaking if he's connected to his cock or not. Same with a woman in her womb. And so the throat and the sacral are so connected. And so what's happening now is spirits trying to create this miracle in action of, can you step in and claim your deepest truth? So ultimately what's trying to happen is spirits trying to say, can you claim your power? Can you claim the totality of your sacral energy? Can you claim the totality of your sacral energy? And you're being asked to look at all the ways that you had diminished and siphoned off your own power. What that means somatically is you've siphoned off your own sacral energy. You cite, and so when your survival physiology comes and this feeling of you're trapped, you're stuck, what's going to happen somatically is the stomach and the solar plexus is going to drop and clear through the sacral energy. That's what's going to happen somatically. Your solar plexus and your stomach is going to drop through your sacral energy. So when we're holding on to a lot of fear, and when there's a lot of fear of early childhood, there's a lot of gut digestion issues when we were in the womb and our mother had dysregulation. We have a lot we're holding in the gut, means we're holding on to a lot of our pain, which means we're going to carry a lot of guilt over our power, right? For example, like a big theme for me, and this is part of it too, is again, I've mentioned I've had a lot of guilt about stepping into my power. And honestly, a part of it is guilt over my gifts, because I know for like a lot of guys and a lot of men, they even struggle just to find one thing they're good at. And I have, I'm grateful and fortunate. I have a bunch of things that I'm good at that are now trying to come together. And I have guilt over that because I know when I fully go, it's a tidal wave. It's fucking a rocket ship. And so Spirit's been revealing to me certain ways that out of guilt that I've siphoned off my own sacral energy through different ways. And now Spirit's like saying it's time to go all the fucking way. And basically what it means is everywhere that you contorted or molded or conformed or siphoned your energy, now that is being revealed. I also have a big fear of being attacked or being invaded. I have a fear actually that people will try to take from me, that people will, if I get big and I'm in my light, that people will hook into me. I do have a bit of that fear. I actually have that fear of other men hooking into me, that other men who are more wounded. That is actually like something that I have, where if I get really, really big and I fully claim the power that comes through me, that other men will hook into me. Like that is actually something that I've been working through in my space. And so maybe this resonates for you on your path, because the way we hook in is through the sacral, right? So for example, if say I have a fear of other men hooking into me, it means other men who are really compressed in their sacral energy will try to take from my sacral field. What that really means is that a man who's knowing and conscious container of consciousness is not as strong. He's like, basically what it means, he doesn't know who he is, right? So when men take from other men, usually men who are more movable in themselves, they don't know who they are, will take from men who are really sure of who they are and really sort of comfortable in their own skin. And with women, a lot of it is like women will siphon off other energy from women that like they know are more radiant and more powerful, right? And this is what a lot of dark energy does. A lot of dark energy, a lot of entities, they try to siphon energy. It's essentially people living through wounds, people living through a compressed sacral field. But when your sacral field opens, and here's the thing too, you guys, your tie, and maybe probably what you've been feeling for the past 6 to 8 months, you've probably been feeling a lot of scarcity. And you can post in the comments if this resonates with you, the amount of scarcity that you potentially have felt this month, this year, the past 8 months. Your connection to abundance is directly predicated off the size and cleanliness of your sacral field, right? So if you're struggling with abundance, I guarantee that you're compressing in your sacral field. If you really doubt your capacity to create what you want, I bet you it's constituted on a compressed sacral field. The really crazy thing, you guys, about the sacral field, and when I say the sacral field, it's like creativity, it's vitality, it's sexual energy, it's knowing in who you are and trusting in your capacity to create exactly what you want and knowing exactly what your path forward is. That when you totally decompress your sacral field, that is how you move into inner union. That is how you move into wholeness. That is how you move into wholeness. This is why I believe so much of what's happening right now has to do with sacred union timelines, has to do with new relational archetypes forming, because people that can truly open up their sacral field, now what happens is like, and I'll ask this in the comments, you guys, what do you think happens when you fully open your sacral field relationally, when you relate to the opposing pole? So anyone want to post it? What do you think happens to your relationship to the opposite sex or the opposing pole when you totally explode your sacral field? What do you think happens? How do you think that shifts your relationship to the opposing pole? How do you think that shifts your relationship to the opposing pole? So if anyone wants to post, you can post in the comments. But how do you think opening your sacral field shifts your relationship to the opposing pole? Because this is where we become whole. When your sacral field opens, it's really, really going to do a bunch of things, but it's going to shift how you relate to the opposing pole. I'll tell you exactly what it's going to do. It's going to move you into a vibration of devotion. You're going to be like, oh, that's what it means to be devotional. That's what it means to be devotional. And when I say that's what it means to be devotional, because what we are searching for relationally is a spiritual experience. If I could break down what a spiritual experience is energetically, it's feeling all of us. It's feeling the full capacity of our soul's capability in our flesh, in our cells, right? So if I could break down what creating a spiritual experience is somatically, it's when the sacral field explodes. When your sacral energy totally opens without constriction, without holding on. That's a somatic embodiment of creating and cultivating a spiritual experience. So what happens is you now begin to create somatically what you were searching for karmically, relationally. And that's why a sacred union is really two people with totally expanded sacral fields that find one another and can move into a space of amplification and devotion, right? It shifts. Your energy shifts because you no longer are using the opposing pole. When your sacral field opens, you're beginning to embody and reclaim what you feel maybe was taken from you or what you feel that you lost. And so now as you begin to embody it, you begin to hold what you have been seeking and what you had been seeking in dysfunctional relationships, in trauma relationships, in codependent relationships. You become the embodiment of it. Robin says, I'm sovereign and magnetic. Exactly. Someone's sovereignty is going to be predicated off how clear, expanded, and open their sacral field is. Basically, what it means is that you are the most alive that you are capable of feeling. That is so much of what's happening right now, right? And that's why things have been so challenging the past 6 to 8 months, because Spirit is trying to show all of your own ego patterns, fear, old material, different things from your life and your ancestors' life that have been gone in the way historically of you feeling as alive as you're capable of feeling. You're also looking at the ways that you have been complicit in that. And so with the energy right now, it's both a test and a natural organic process. What I mean by a test is, in order to move into your abundant ascension, you don't do nothing. You have to do really hard things. You have to face a lot of fear. You have to take action. And so that's the test. Are you going to move into those pieces? But also there's energy and emotion that's moving in your space that is beyond anything that you can control right now. So a big part of why you're feeling the way that you're feeling is beyond your control. And so it's important to surrender and allow the organic sort of alchemical process of what's moving and what's happening in our system to happen, and then realize what's opening in the field and what paths we're supposed to take and where we're supposed to go. And so much of this is, will you let your throat and your sacral totally fucking explode? And what will happen, you guys, when you move into this space, you're like, you claim your life the exact way you want to live your life, not what your parents want, not how your ancestors lived. You are creating your own sort of unique imprint in the earth of how you want to live your life, the exact path that wants to be. If you don't feel seen in a certain environment, you're like, I don't fucking feel seen here. I am not hanging out in that environment anymore. So when your sacral really opens, your throat, things that felt harder to say feel more available to you. Your truth, like that deepest truth in your body, That's why people say like it's the 5D. We're opening up the 5D. What happens in these portals, your 5D is intersecting with 3D, which means that, and that's why, Robin, that's why you feel alone. You feel alone because a higher dimensional energy is merging with your reality, and you feel alone. You don't feel seen by other people because they're not on that frequency. They're in another universe. They're in another world, right? And so much of being seen is that we get reaffirmed on the reality that's emerging within us through other people who are having some variation or similarity of an experience, right? And so there's a lot of people now that are sort of in this, but don't feel seen, don't feel heard. Maybe anger is coming up in that. They don't feel seen by their family, don't feel seen by their friends in different things because the consciousness that's forming feels like it's taking away from timelines, frequencies, and vibrations of other people. And so it puts them into a space of feeling alone, feeling isolated. That's like a very real, tangible thing. That's why there is like, when you are someone that's ascending quickly, there's a lot of inherent loneliness in this. But really what it's about is that it's about you. It means that you have a very dynamic, you have a very old soul, a very big, powerful soul that's trying to just come into all that it's capable of. Probably your whole life, you've been this deep, deep feeler, this deep person who felt all this potential, and you're trying to come into all of it. You're trying to finally say that I can just really be who I am. As deep, as complex, as dynamic as that is, I can be all of it, right? And so that's where the throat and the sacral is, it's all trying to open together. So all the ways that you felt guilt over your power, all the ways that you felt shame, the ways you felt something wrong with you, you're going to be abandoned, you're going to outshine, you're going to be attacked. You're coming to a confrontation with that right now, where Spirit's saying you have to step into this space where your sacral field totally opens. So what you're doing is you're reclaiming this both for you, but also the lineage. And that's happening simultaneously. So as a woman, you're going to be reclaiming your womb for all the women in your line who weren't able to step into your womb. Also from the ways that your womb was maybe shut down from a certain age. And as a guy, you're going to be stepping into the full power of your primal masculine energy in a way that the men were repressed, in a way the men weren't able to, and in the way the men were shut down. They couldn't hold their power. They couldn't hold that power. You're coming into the full actualization of that. And then all the pieces, how that got compounded in your life. So all the ways that you've allowed other people to siphon your energy and all the ways that you've siphoned your own energy. And that's going to be an individual experience of why you felt you've done that. But I will say a really common theme is guilt and shame. Guilt. And when we're holding guilt, it means we're holding on to someone else's pain. We're holding on to someone else's pain as a way to try to get a need met, right? If I hold on to their pain, maybe I can have my needs met. But we're trying to hold on to their pain to ease their burden, right? Potentially, maybe we were in the womb and our mom was going through some certain trauma and our system sort of inherited all her anxiety and dysregulation. And so we don't even, and this probably happened unconsciously. We don't even know that we were taking on other people's stuff. And really that we were doing that was a way, ultimately, that we actually knew that when we moved into our power, that we would have to leave certain people, or we'd have to leave certain ways of relating to other people and ways other people were allowed to relate to us. That's all going to be put in conflict. That's all going to be put in conflict. And so right now it's a massive breaking of a cord, of an attachment, a massive breaking in so many facets. Like there's so many things happening. You're breaking probably a cord with your family system. You're breaking a cord with your ancestors. You're probably breaking a cord karmically in terms of relationships and what your sort of identities and codependent patterns are. You're breaking all these cords together as one so that you can fully move into the vitality that you were capable of and have always been capable of. And so March and what's really been happening is the pressure cooker of everything in your system that had been held dormant, that was blocking and siphoning off that sacral energy, is now really present, right? And your consciousness is evolving and shifting and changing. And that's why it feels so fucking confusing. We feel really in between right now. We feel really, really in between because all this crazy stuff that's either quantum or from the unconscious, meaning we don't have any memory of. It's when we were really young or when we were in the womb, or it's in the quantum field, meaning we took on something else generationally, right? And so we don't have memory or any knowing of what the material is, but it's there, and it's always been in our system, and it's always been the reason why we haven't been able to be the full expression of who we are. It's always been there, but now it's just in a place where it's kind of like pervading us, right? So all this material has been in your system, but now it's just like at plain sight, and your body's organically processing it, which is why this shit can be so dark and your ego gets hit, because all the ways that fuel the ego's identification are now pervading you. You're like, what the fuck? That's why you feel so, what is my life? Because all this shit that was being held unconsciously, or it's being infiltrated from a quantum space, is now in your body and moving through your nervous system. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? But then as it starts to move, something starts to break through. The miracle starts to happen. And that's where you'll experience these crazy sacral activations where you have all this creative energy. You have all this clarity about, oh my God. And what might start to happen is moving towards the life that you want will begin to feel more available, right? So maybe you've been stagnant, or you've been stuck, you've been idle in certain ways that you know you're meant for this, or you know you're moving towards this, but you haven't been able to like execute and take action. You'll hear a lot of people talk about Ascension, how so much of the ascension process is going to begin to become externalized. I really believe that. I've basically been in like a 5-year ascension process, and it's basically been all internal. Means my external reality shifted a bit, but it hasn't really shifted that much. Whereas I probably jumped like 1,000 timelines internally. And a lot of ascension people will talk about this. And they'll also talk about how a lot of the ascension process is going to begin to become externalized. And we're at this juncture point where I really, really believe is the miracle comes as this year 2025 evolves and moves on. I believe a lot of the internal ascension is going to begin to become externalized. I really, really, truly believe that. And I believe it's going to happen in a way that we can't even comprehend or see, in a way that the ego can't even manifest or understand. I think it's going to happen really, really fast too. I think it's going to happen really, really fast. I don't know when that speed's going to pick up, but I believe when you've been in this sort of internal ascension process, when it picks up, it goes, right? Whereas other people, maybe this slow build, when you've been on this ascension process and sort of your sacral energy opens, you're going to like manifest like crazy. Abundance is going to show up. So when your sacral field opens, you're going to notice these influxes of abundance. So I want you to be really, really aware of that. As your sacral field opens, all of a sudden someone's going to send you money, or all of a sudden you're going to like sell out something, or you're going to like have your best financial month, or because abundance is all about vitality. It's all about energy and how energy moves through you. Right? So if we're struggling with abundance, it means that energy is stuck. Something is stuck. So if we want to be and so much of that is actually your ability to embrace discomfort, right? If we're living in comfort, then we're constantly blocked. Because, if we think about abundance is the flow of energy. It's the flow of energy, how energy moves. Abundance is movement, right? And so we're being revealed right now where we've been stagnant. So something is trying to move. Something is trying to move. And when that sacral field opens in conjunction, things move, and they move really big. And when your sacral field is open and you're a powerful being, your capacity to magnetize, to draw, to pull, to manifest becomes really prolific, really prophetic. It becomes really, really fucking potent. And that's what's coming right now. And that's why all this sort of shit's being brought up, because it's showing you where you've had other people to siphon, and you've siphoned yourself, where the flow of movement hasn't been able to happen, which is probably why in your life the past couple of years, there's going to be certain ways that you've been stagnant. Maybe it's with your health. Maybe it's relationally. Maybe it's in your business. Maybe it's creatively. Maybe it's financially. When the sacral opens and your throat opens in conjunction, everything starts to move. Everything starts to move. Because again, coming back to how I sort of started off this live, where you were trapped, that feeling when you were 2 years old and you cried yourself out, that is coming up in your system right now. The ways maybe that your great grandmother whatever experience, whatever she experienced and has been trapped in her system and helpless and in anguish and terror. That's all coming up in your system right now. Everywhere that your lineage has been stuck is coming up in you. Not just you from your life, but where your entire family line has been stuck in terms of vitality. Money is just a byproduct of your vitality, right? Because abundance is like a holistic view on energetic vitality and energetic movement. And so as the sacral and the throat really, really fucking opens, now things can move everywhere that we've been stuck and the lineage has been stuck. And so now what happens is your throat actually starts to speak and command your truth in such a way that creates that movement, right? It becomes more available to you. You're like, okay, spirit, I get it. I know exactly what to do. I'm meant to go live in this place. I'm doing it. It's fucking happening now. Now's the time. I'm going to walk through this door. There's no more holding back in comfort. Now is the time. And when you do that, you start to move into like your destiny timeline, God's timeline, the miracle timeline. It's all fucking coming. And everything gets freed up. And now your power really, really comes. And so and it's going to shift everything. It's going to shift everything. It's going to shift people that are drawn to you, attracted to you, magnetized to you. It's going to shift. You're going to look at relationships from such a deeper sense of wholeness. It's going to blow your fucking mind. It's going to blow your fucking mind. Like you're going to see what is karma and you're going to see people that can't meet you so fucking clear. You're going to see it so clear, it's going to terrify you. How fucking clear it's going to be. Your psychicness. When we have psychic gifts, it's directly predicated to how open a man's cock is or how open a woman's womb is. That's directly what it's predicated upon. Robin W says, I'm magnetizing all of it, including so much. I don't want to, but it's also very clearly an opportunity to say, no, this lands. Yes. I can feel my mom's scarcity right now, her collapse. Yeah, you're gonna feel other people's vitality being compressed and shut down everywhere. You're gonna feel things at such a different degree. And that's why it's a little bit alone, because most people probably won't be able to sort of tune into the consciousness that you're at. Maybe some people will in little bits and pieces, but not the totality of sort of where you're moving and sort of the place that you're moving into, right? So it's going to feel a little isolating, particularly with people who just are not on this path, people who are not on a spiritual path, people who have younger souls. Like if someone has a younger soul, they're not going to be attuned to any of this, right? If someone has a younger soul, they won't even know what this is, right? And so, and people, and this has a lot to do with your level of body sensitivity to energy, to whatever the planetary movements, all that different shit, body sensitivities. Also, what's a really big part of this is your lineage, right? If like your bloodline has a lot to do with the depth of ascension that you experience. So much of it has to do with your bloodline, the lineage you come from. And a lot of it has to do with if there were like spiritually or psychically powerful people that come in. It doesn't mean that they were psychics, but it means they had that in them and they probably weren't able to move into that, but they had that energetic capacity. And so that's a huge part of this, right? Because people always ask me, like, why do some people experience this and some people don't? I would say it's the age of your soul, whatever contract your soul is supposed to come into this lifetime, your level of body sensitivity, how open your channel is. A more open channel, the more we're going to feel, the less open. So the age of your soul's contract, your level of body sensitivity, how open or closed your channel is, and then also your bloodline and your lineage. And truth be told, how powerful your lineage is, right? If people didn't really have any psychic connections in their line, they're going to be less prone to kind of come into these ascension pathways. Like this is like those, I think 5 things I said, that's why some people really start to like get thrust into this consciousness while others don't even know what's going on. Or maybe some people like experience it a little bit, right? Those are the factors that have to do with it. which is a bunch of different factors. And in terms of like what our soul's contract is, I don't really know even how to answer what our soul. It's just whatever, because our soul had many different lifetimes, and whatever its sort of incarnation iteration is in this lifetime. And I think it has a lot to do with that your soul is meant to come fully awakened in this lifetime. And I don't think that's the case with everyone. Someone could have an old soul, but their incarnation in this lifetime is not to become fully awakened, which sucks, but it's the truth. And so if you're someone who you know your soul is meant to become fully awakened in this lifetime, like be fucking grateful that it's such a fucking privilege. So while things have been so challenging and difficult, think about how much of a fucking privilege it is to be someone who's meant to come fully awakened in this lifetime. You have an old soul. Um, your iteration, your contract is to become fully awake. You have a strong bloodline that had powers that you're only realizing by what's happening through you. Your channel has become pretty open, and I think there's something else, but what a privilege. What a privilege. My mom has a capacity, but she collapsed. The same, like I have so many like psychically gifted people in both my lines that completely never went into those gifts, but it's there, right? And so that's a huge factor, right? And typically people that like come into this process that have really strong bloodlines, they access crazy amounts of ancestral energy, right? So that will also determine how far you're energetically you're accessing, right? So if you have like a really powerful bloodline and you become really awake, there's a good chance you might be going hundreds of years back and what you're energetically accessing. Or if you're someone who's, meant to become awake, but you're only, going a couple generations back, or you're only dealing with your parents' stuff, right? It's so many variations and complexities, but this is really all part of this new consciousness that's coming in. And really, I believe it's so much of it now is the sacral and the throat. Like right now is so much the sacral and the throat energies. So I think I'm going to leave it there because we talked about so many different things. Obviously, this is very, very complex, you guys, all these different, the process and so much like the work I do in my practice, somatically, energetically, emotionally, is about, opening your sacral center, opening up those sacral fields. And I think this upgrade is going to be happening at a different level. I've actually had the experience of like the past couple of weeks, what's coming to my space where I'm like, oh, this is what I've been being prepared for. Oh, this is why I've been on this 5-year journey. And it feels like, oh, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. But it feels like to me, I've sort of had this like what feels really true in my space where it's like kind of God beginning to say, oh, this is what you've been working towards, but this is just the beginning of sort of that process of everything opening. It's just the beginning of that process of everything opening, but it's like, the message is it's even bigger than you think, meaning energetically, it's even more expansive and more pleasurable and ecstatic than you. And I think a lot of you guys, what this is about is our capacity of how we can feel in our body. With in terms of externalize things, that's sort of like semantics. It's so much because when you feel a certain way, you will create a certain outcome. So much of this is how you feel internally. It's what, and I'm really like, huh, okay. And so the message that Spirit actually told me is like, it's even bigger and more, and like, it's so much joy. Like, joy is what's really trying to come, and like the natural place of joy. And so it's trying to be, it's even greater than what you think. It's beyond your knowing. And it's less to do with like an egoic externalized outcome and more about like an energetic capacity and an energetic frequency internally. That's more what it's about. And then I believe the external is sort of like on God's terms. You don't really know what that's going to be, right? You kind of got to allow your ego to get out of the way and allow that frequency to come through you and to dictate and create what's supposed to come through you from a place that we can create ultimately what our soul is here to do. But it's very much about how you feel, right? And so that's just like, it's a frequency of abundance, it's joy, it's pleasure, it's ecstasy. I had a session with a client the other day, and we were like removing an ancestral pain body, and her body was in so much chronic pain. And so she's literally like dispelling an ancestral pain body from her space. And so this is like happening like with a lot of different people right now. And so a lot of it is like how you feel and your capacity to hold joy and pleasure in your system. So it's even bigger and greater than what you guys know. So you got to understand there's something happening that's beyond your ego. So when it gets dark and when it gets grim, try to see if you can like drop in and surrender beyond the pain, because when you surrender beyond the pain, what you'll find is pleasure. When you surrender beyond the pain, not pleasure, relief. When you surrender fully into that pain, you don't find pleasure, you guys. I think what's more accurate is a release and relief. And relief is the direct sort of like antithesis of being trapped, right? So you're being trapped. You're trapped in your body, right? When you drop into the pain fully, you experience relief. Means that trap feeling, right? And think about how much in our system the fight or flight response is all about feeling trapped, like we're stuck, right? And so what we're ultimately looking for is if we can surrender beyond the pain or beyond that stored trauma and survival physiology, we find relief, right? And in that relief open ups, and what happens in the aftermath of relief is the allowance of joy, pleasure, ecstasy, abundance, right? That's the aftermath of the relief and the release. And so if you can move beyond the ego and allow the relief and the release to come, and just allow it to be there and trust in sort of a greater cosmic unfolding, you will start to find this release. Relief is coming. Relief is coming. I really, really believe that. And that's why there is a miracle coming, and it's greater than you even know. It's beyond your knowing. And it's going to feel like what you've always wanted to create is going to feel suddenly just more available to you. It's going to kind of feel more present. So I'm going to leave it there, you guys, for today's live. Spring equinox, March 21st. Robin W says, I'm so grateful. My mom is an old soul and she got stuck. Yeah. And I think that's a place where we want to get to with this, guys, where you start to feel what a privilege. Like, I know, like, I definitely move into the space with, being angry and frustrated for not being seen throughout my lineage and stuff at times, but, or in the family system or whatever. But it comes to the space of what a privilege that you are the one. Like, you are the one that was chosen. What a fucking privilege that you are the one through your whole family line that all their power that wasn't able to live through them now gets to live through you. So we move into a space of gratitude and what a privilege, and taking kind of hold of that responsibility, our relationship to the challenges that come with these paths of ascension can shift. They can shift, and we move in the space of reverence and gratitude for those that came before us. And we realize how powerful our family line was, but they didn't have either the resources or the support or the tools, or that just wasn't their contract. And for whatever reason, it's up to us. And so if we have gratitude for that, and like, what a fucking privilege that we are the ones. What a privilege. If you guys have any questions about anything I talked about today, feel free to, drop it in the comments on YouTube underneath the video. You can send me a DM on Instagram. If you guys like this video, please give it a like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe so you can be notified in the future when I'm going live, just like this. And other than that, wish you all a great weekend, you guys. And thanks for tuning into today's live. And we'll see you next time.